United Nations, I know you're watching it. American Senate, you are watching what I'm doing, I'm saying here. Special advisor to Trump, now, please tell Trump to save our life in Nigeria. They are killing Christians in Nigeria, massacre Christians. If they say they kill Muslims, Muslims are being killed. By who? By Muslims.
Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
Good morning and welcome to Qnotables 4AM Talking Points Live. We begin with the top story. The Iran front is back at the center of global tension. Reports say the Pentagon is preparing options for another round of strikes against Iran, while President Trump has warned Tehran that its latest offer is unacceptable. The pressure is centered on Iran's nuclear program, oil exports, and control around the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. forces are already operating in the region, and the strategic pressure is building on multiple fronts: military, economic, maritime, and cyber. This is the kind of story that does not stay contained. If Iran escalates, shipping, oil prices, regional allies, American forces, and global markets all feel it. The world is watching the Strait of Hormuz again, and that alone tells us how serious this moment is. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most important pressure points in the world. U.S. Central Command says commercial ships have been redirected and multiple vessels have been disabled during enforcement actions tied to Iran. That waterway is a critical energy route, and when ships are stopped, delayed, or redirected there, oil markets and military planners pay attention fast. This is not just a Middle East story, this is a global supply chain story, this is a fuel price story, this is a military readiness story. If Iran tries to turn Hormuz into a bargaining chip, the response from Washington and its allies could shape the next major phase of this conflict. The pressure campaign is also moving through the energy sector. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Iran's oil storage is effectively full as U.S. pressure restricts exports. If Iran cannot move oil out, it may be forced to slow production, absorb major economic damage, or find riskier ways to move crude around sanctions. Oil is one of Tehran's main lifelines. When that lifeline gets squeezed, the regime faces hard choices. It can negotiate, escalate, or take the hit. Right now, the United States appears to be pressing on every weak point at once. And the cyber front may already be reaching American soil. Reports say U.S. officials suspect Iranian-linked hackers breached internet-connected fuel tank reader systems at American gas stations. These systems monitor fuel levels, and some appear to have been exposed online with weak protection. Even if no fuel was physically altered, false readings can disrupt operations, cause confusion, and expose how vulnerable basic infrastructure can be. Foreign cyber pressure does not always begin with banks or power grids. Sometimes it starts with overlooked systems sitting in plain sight. From Iran, we move to the terror front in Africa. President Trump and Nigerian officials say U.S. and Nigerian forces killed Abu Bilal al-Manuki and several ISIS figures in northeast Nigeria. The operation marks a serious counter-terror move in a region that has become one of the most important ISIS-linked battlegrounds in the world. Nigeria and the Lake Chad Basin have faced years of jihadist violence. The strike shows that American counter-terror operations in Africa are still active, and it signals that the United States and Nigeria are coordinating against ISIS leadership. If confirmed at the operational level, this is a major hit against an active terror network. U.S. Africa Command also released footage tied to the Nigeria operation. That video gives weight to the official account and highlights a broader point. The terrorism fight has shifted heavily into Africa. ISIS-linked groups have used remote terrain, weak borders, and unstable local conditions to build influence. This is not just about one terrorist leader. It is about whether the United States is moving back into a more aggressive counter-terror posture overseas. Africa remains one of the main places to watch. Here at home, federal prosecutors previously charged a Michigan man with attempting to attack a U.S. military base on behalf of ISIS. The alleged plot targeted a military facility and was stopped before lives were lost. This case is a reminder that the terror threat is not only overseas. Radicalized individuals inside the United States remain a serious concern, especially when military installations become targets. Service members face threats abroad, but the homeland threat cannot be ignored. Military bases, recruiting centers, and federal facilities remain high-value targets for extremists. The cartel crackdown is also taking a sharper legal turn. The Justice Department has moved to bring terrorism-related charges in cases tied to cartel activity, including allegations involving corrupt Mexican officials and cartel-linked operations. This matters because the terrorism framework gives prosecutors heavier tools, broader charges, and stronger penalties. The federal view is shifting. Cartels are no longer being treated only as criminal gangs. They are cross-border threat systems tied to fentanyl, human smuggling, weapons, corruption, and political intimidation. That change could reshape how the United States fights cartel networks. At sea, the Coast Guard scored a major drug interdiction off Colombia. The Coast Guard cutter Tahoma and a deployed helicopter crew stopped 3 suspected smuggling vessels and seized more than 6,000 pounds of cocaine valued at nearly $45.8 million. One vessel refused to stop, and the helicopter crew fired disabling shots into the engine. This is the drug war before it reaches American streets. Fast boats, cartel logistics, maritime enforcement, and U.S. crews working far from shore. Every load stopped at sea is poison that does not make it into American communities. Now to domestic politics. President Trump is openly pressuring Republicans Rand Paul and Lauren Boebert, calling them difficult votes, and even asking whether someone should run against Boebert in Colorado's 4th District. This is not just personality politics. This is about legislative discipline. Trump wants Republicans aligned behind his agenda. Lawmakers who slow down major bills or block key priorities may face primary pressure. The message to the GOP is direct: support the program or risk becoming the next target. The Senate parliamentarian has also blocked a major White House security funding proposal from a fast-track GOP bill. The proposal reportedly included security elements tied to Trump's planned East Wing ballroom project. Republicans wanted the funding attached to a broader package, but Senate rules blocked that route. The fight now moves to whether the language can be rewritten. The larger issue is security around the White House and around President Trump at a time of heightened threats. Republicans will now have to decide whether to fight the ruling, rework the language, or move the funding separately. In Louisiana, the Republican Senate primary delivered a major shakeup. Senator Bill Cassidy failed to make the runoff after Trump opposed him. Julia Letlow and John Fleming advanced. Cassidy had angered many Republican voters by voting to convict Trump after January 6th, and that decision has now followed him into the 2026 cycle. This result shows Trump's influence inside Republican primaries remains strong. It also sends a message to other Republicans who broke with Trump. The base has not forgotten. In Tennessee, Democratic Representative Steve Cohen is dropping his re-election bid after redistricting changed his Memphis-based district. Cohen became emotional during a television interview while discussing the decision. He has served in Congress since 2007, but new district lines made his path back much harder. This is how redistricting can end political careers without a single general election vote. Map power matters. District lines can be just as decisive as campaign speeches, fundraising, and endorsements.
At shop.isitwaya.com, everything you buy supports Acun.top, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Acun Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toaster and tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Acun Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Acun's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isitwaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Acun.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Boards, May 17, 2026, now to election integrity. President Trump is calling for the Save America Act, voter ID, and proof of citizenship requirements. The message is direct. Elections should be limited to eligible citizens, and states should verify identity before ballots are counted. Supporters see this as basic election security. The central issue is public trust. When voters do not trust the process, every result becomes contested. Election integrity will remain a major 2026 issue, especially in close races and states with changing voter rules. Crime and public safety are also back in focus. Posts are circulating claims that armed citizens stopped a large share of active shooters and that violent crime has dropped sharply under Kash Patel's FBI tenure. The public wants clear numbers, honest reporting, and accurate records. The larger debate is about policing, self-defense, and federal crime data. Americans want to know whether crime is actually falling, whether the statistics are being presented honestly, and whether lawful armed citizens are being properly counted when they stop violent attacks. In New York, the Long Island Railroad strike has created major disruption. The LIR is the nation's busiest commuter rail line. When service is suspended, the effects hit hundreds of thousands of riders, employers, roads, and the broader regional economy. This is not just a transit inconvenience. It shows how dependent major cities are on functioning public transportation and labor stability. When a rail system this large stops, the whole region feels it. In Denver, a $9 million homeless services building reportedly remains boarded up and vacant more than 3 years after the city bought it. That story hits a larger national frustration. Cities spend huge sums on homelessness, but taxpayers often see little measurable improvement. The question is simple. Where did the money go? Who approved the spending? And why is the building still unused? Spending millions while producing no service, no shelter, and no visible result is exactly the kind of government failure that fuels public anger. Now to the migrant child labor allegation. A circulated clip claims an Office of Refugee Resettlement funded project manager admitted that unaccompanied migrant children were sent into factory labor situations. The broader issue is already serious. Migrant children have been documented in dangerous jobs after entering the country without parents. The question is who tracked these children, who placed them with sponsors, and who failed to protect them after release. This is a child safety story, a labor abuse story, and a government accountability story. In Minnesota, the Feeding Our Future scandal is back in the headlines. Amy Bach, convicted in the massive COVID meal fraud case, now claims from jail that Repressor Ilhan Omar knew about the $250 million Somali meal fraud scheme. Omar has not been criminally charged in that case, but the claim adds political pressure to one of the largest pandemic fraud scandals in the country. Federal prosecutors already proved that money meant to feed children was stolen through fake meal claims and shell operations. The next question is whether oversight failures were bureaucratic, political, or something worse. Harvey Weinstein's latest Manhattan sex crimes trial has ended in a mistrial after jurors deadlocked. The case involved a rape charge from Jessica Mann, and it was the second time in a year that a jury could not reach a verdict on that charge. Weinstein remains one of the central figures of the Me Too era, but the legal process continues to stall. The mistrial leaves another unresolved chapter. The allegations remain, the courtroom fight continues, and the justice system faces another high-profile failure to reach a final answer. In Italy, a car-ramming attack in Modena injured 8 people, 4 of them seriously. Authorities identified the driver as Salim El Kudri and detained him after the vehicle drove onto a sidewalk, hit pedestrians, and crashed near a shop. Investigators are looking at motive, accountability, and mental health factors. The result is still the same. Multiple innocent people were hurt, and Italian authorities now have to explain how and why it happened. Now to international conflict and strategic movement. Drones reportedly struck the Novinomysk Azot chemical plant in Russia's Stavropol region. The facility is one of Russia's major chemical and fertilizer plants, and reports describe it as important to industrial and military production. Russia said air defenses responded, while footage suggested damage at the site. This is part of Ukraine's growing long-range drone campaign against Russian infrastructure. The war is no longer limited to trenches and border towns. It is reaching deeper into Russia's industrial base. Vladimir Putin is scheduled to visit Beijing for talks with Xi Jinping. The timing matters. Russia and China have been building a strategic partnership shaped by war, sanctions, energy, trade, and opposition to U.S. pressure. A Putin-Xi meeting soon after U.S.-China talks sends a clear message. Beijing is balancing both sides while keeping Moscow close. For Washington, the concern is whether China uses diplomacy with Trump while quietly strengthening Russia's position in the background. The Trump-Xi relationship is also back in focus. Recent U.S.-China trade talks point to movement on tariffs, agricultural purchases, aviation, and market access. China wants tariff relief and economic stability. The United States wants enforceable trade terms, purchases that actually happen, and fairer access for American producers. This is about leverage. If China follows through, American farmers, manufacturers, and exporters could benefit. If China stalls, Washington will have to decide how hard to press. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says the United States and China are willing to continue the trade truce, and that progress has been made on rebalancing trade. Reports say China may expand purchases of American farm goods and address some market access issues. The details matter because early promises from Beijing often sound better than the final enforcement. For American farmers and exporters, the question is not whether China made a promise. The question is whether China will actually buy and whether the United States will hold Beijing to the deal. The China debate also includes the old Thucydides trap theory. Posts are arguing that Trump's China approach breaks the idea that conflict between a rising power and an established power is inevitable. The counterargument is that war with China is not destiny if American leaders use trade leverage, military strength, direct diplomacy, and economic pressure correctly. This is analysis, but it matters. The question is whether Washington can compete with Beijing without walking into war.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 17, 2026. In Cuba, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says $100 million in food and medicine is available for the Cuban people, but is not reaching them because of the Cuban regime. Cuba has faced years of shortages, power problems, and economic decline. Rubio's point is that outside help exists, but the regime blocks or controls what reaches ordinary citizens. This is both a human suffering story and a regime accountability story. Aid does not matter if the government prevents the people from receiving it. The China human rights story also continues. The documentary Silent Harvest, The Courage to Speak Up, premiered with a focus on unethical organ procurement practices in China. Doctors, experts, and victims are raising concerns about forced organ harvesting and the treatment of prisoners of conscience. This story connects medicine, human rights, and the Chinese Communist Party. The international medical community has to decide whether it will keep treating China as a normal partner while these accusations remain unresolved. Ukraine is also facing questions about elections during wartime. A post from Kiev questioned why Ukraine can hold concerts but not elections. Ukraine suspended elections under martial law after Russia's invasion. Supporters say a normal national vote during war would be unsafe and impractical. Critics say long delays create accountability problems, especially when Western money and weapons continue flowing. The question is fair. How long can emergency rule continue without a renewed public mandate? Across the West, political pressure is rising. Unite the Kingdom posts, Glenn Beck's Make England Great Again speech in London, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz saying America is no longer the land of opportunity, all point to a broader shift. National identity, immigration, trade, and public trust are driving politics across the West. This is not only an American moment. Europe is dealing with the same pressures, and voters are pushing back against leaders they believe have ignored them. Now to science, health, and federal accountability. White Coat Waste is claiming a dangerous pathogen incident occurred at the NIH's Rocky Mountain Laboratories in Montana, describing a pathogen as released, lost, or stolen. The group is demanding accountability around federally funded animal labs and high-risk biological research. After COVID, lab safety, virus research, NIH oversight, and public transparency became major concerns. When dangerous pathogens, taxpayer money, and federal labs are involved, the public deserves documentation, not vague answers. The broader biolab debate is not going away. Posts are circulating under the frame of a U.S.-funded biolab denial saga, arguing that officials and media outlets dismissed concerns about risky biological research. The key issue is transparency. Disclose the grants, disclose the partners, disclose the accidents, disclose the oversight failures. The public has a right to know what research was funded, where it happened, and who was responsible. Another White Coat Waste-linked claim says kitten experiments were moved into NIH after a USDA lab was shut down during the Trump administration. The broader issue is taxpayer-funded animal testing. It involves research ethics, public money, and federal agencies that often operate outside public view. Lawmakers are demanding answers about what experiments were funded, who approved them, and why the public was not told sooner. This is where ethics, science, and federal spending collide. A major food recall is also on the board. Strauss Family Creamery issued a voluntary recall of select organic ice cream flavors because of possible metal foreign material. The affected products were distributed across multiple states and sold through major retailers. Consumers are being told not to eat the recalled products and to check specific production lots. Metal contamination is not a minor issue. Families should check freezer labels before serving these products. Now to military and defense updates. Vice Adm. Kurt Renshaw visited the USS George H.W. Bush. CENTCOM highlighted U.S. Air Force maintainers working on KC-135 refueling aircraft, and the Air Force updated its religious accommodation process by eliminating religious resolution teams. These may look like separate military housekeeping items, but they all point to force posture, readiness, and internal policy change. The military is not only operating abroad, it is adjusting readiness, personnel rules, and command priorities at home. Trump's communication board is also active. Posts include no games, calm before the storm, the reunion, Space Force references, reflecting pool updates, Oval Office granite work, military imagery, and direct message style posts. Individually, some are symbolic. Together, they show how Trump uses social media as a command board, campaign tool, policy signal, and morale channel. Supporters watch these posts closely because timing, language, and imagery are often part of the message. The climate narrative is also under pressure. A Trump post claims the United Nations climate establishment admitted key projections were wrong, while older predictions from climate alarmist Guy McPherson are resurfacing because he once claimed humans would not survive to 2026. The issue is credibility. Climate policy affects energy, farming, manufacturing, transportation, and family budgets. If leaders want public trust, they need accurate models, honest uncertainty, and accountability for failed fear-based predictions. Several human interest stories round out the board. Robert Blakey, the legal scholar known for helping craft the RICO Act, has died at 90. A military diver died during a cave recovery mission in the Maldives, raising the death toll there. A rider died after falling from a horse at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Entertainment reports say auditions have also begun for the next James Bond. These stories do not carry the same weight as war, crime, and corruption, but they add the human layer to the day's news cycle. And we close with the Qnotables community board. The latest Qnotables episode post is in the stack, along with prayer posts, cats, memes, NASA and space items, and general board chatter. Not every post is a hard news headline, but the board shows the culture behind the feed. Open source tracking, morale, humor, faith, symbolism, and community participation. The serious stories lead the show, but the community keeps the signal moving. That is the rundown for this edition of Qnotables 4AM Talking Points Live. Share the show, subscribe, and keep digging.
Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.